Okay, so Jim Bremner's back with Canadian Tactical Officers Association Copcast on the 4th of April, 2023. And this Copcast, we're going to do a bit of a series on active shooter, giving the events of last week. And we're going to compare Uvalde to Tennessee. Even if it is comparable, I don't know that it is. We're going to talk about training. But right now, as you know, our sponsors are RBG Securities. So if you're looking for security, we can provide you with that. Obviously, Hudson Supply for FastMag and other products, and Lambert Less Lethal. So we have all the solutions here. And my guest today is my dear friend, Nir Maman. He is renowned in the field of active shooter response. He's sought after worldwide. And I thought, who better to talk about these events? And what I can tell you is that when these tragic events occur, I get a lot of emails and texts and phone calls from serving police officers that feel that they have not received enough training to respond to these issues. And where they do get training, let's be fair, they get training, but I don't know that there's enough time put on that. And I can see, when I train people, if to me, it's not as important that they can do the job as they think they can do the job. So it's all about confidence, and you have to build confidence in people. And that comes from hours on the range and elsewhere. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Nir, and we're going to try and break down, active shooter terrorism, mass shootings. There are different layers, and if you haven't studied active shooter for a long time, these can be very confusing terms that are used frequently in the media. But there are very specific things in regard to active shooters. The fact is, there is a profile, and it's pretty clear. Again, if you've studied it enough, these are not random acts. They're typically disgruntled people. There's usually a history. There's usually a manifesto. There's more and more we see online rants and things like this, whether it's on YouTube or any of the other social media. So there is a profile, and most times it's male. A high percentage of the time it is a male. We hope to have Dr. Peter Collins on, a renowned forensic psychiatrist, but he just couldn't make it today. But again, in this series, we'll have him on, and we'll get into the psychological makeup of active shooters. So without any further ado, I'm going to talk to Nir. And how you doing today?
Jimmy, fantastic.
Good to see you.
Fantastic. Great to be here as always. Thank you very much.
Great. So when we look at the events of, I guess, last week, quite recently, 27th, I think it was, yes. March. So the immediate thing for the media is to compare Uvalde to what happened in Tennessee. Is that fair?
So, short answer is no. Okay. We're definitely dealing with active shooter events in both of those scenarios. However, the variables are vastly different. The officers at Uvalde were encountered with a certain set of variables that didn't necessarily exist in Tennessee. And so it makes it very difficult to know what the actual outcomes would have been or could have been. So a lot of this is speculation. Now, excuse me, before we get into it, I'm going to start off that, my nature, people who know me will know this, I'm very critical. My passion is what drives what I do and what I say and how I think. And when it comes to the topic of active shooter, I'm only focused with one thing, which is whether or not we're actually being true and congruent to the stated objective of saving as many innocent lives as possible.
Is there a stated objective in North America?
There's a stated objective, yes, to save lives as quickly as possible, right? And
so is the training incongruent to that stated objective?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. And this is where I'll discuss, I'll give my thoughts, my opinions, which are mostly professional and experience-based, but also personal, on whether Tennessee really resonates with that objective. I know that, where we are today in North American policing, the police community is desperately trying to repair its image. 99% of it is against a battle that shouldn't even be. It's police being demonized with absolutely nothing of substance. Police are just the scapegoats. So we're already facing that battle. When we look at, specific incidents, for example, Uvalde, that also further left a big stain on the policing community, and rightfully so. I won't justify anything in Uvalde. There's nothing to justify.
Right.
It was a debacle. It was a complete contravention of the oath. It was a complete letdown of the souls inside that school that were depending on the grown men and women with badges and guns who said, "I will serve and protect you." So there's nothing to justify. My goal, however, is to make sure that we're really being as sharp as we claim to be, and that we really do save as many lives as possible. And so, for me, again, I come to this. I don't know personally, just personally, of any other instructors when we talk about active shooter prevention that bring a dynamic of, sure, I spent 25 years in military and law enforcement and security, and I've specialized in active shooter prevention in Israel. I was in charge of our protocols in the IDF, North America. All of that, fantastic, great. I've enjoyed what I've done, but for me, where it hits home is that my family suffered a very grave tragedy in March 19th, 2012 in Toulouse, France, in the active terrorist shooting attack that took the lives of four innocent victims, one of them being an 8-year-old girl who was a relative. And so I take this very personally. And when we talk about the subject matter of active shooter prevention, there's definitely something to separating professionalism and personal effects, but this is definitely a place where those have to merge. At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that there's no reason for, I got 5 kids, go to different schools, and if God forbid an active shooter ever shows up, an active killer, I got to stop using that term, an active killer ever shows up in their schools.
So can I just stop you there? Why do you separate that term from active shooter to active killer?
All right. Well, excellent question. I have been sucked into using active shooter forever because that's just a term that was given to us because we have been, preconditioned.
There's an assumption.
If there's an assumption, that leads to the tactical faults here, right? We'll get to that momentarily.
Yeah, sure.
But, the assumption is that it's always an individual with a gun that goes in. And, I've heard all kinds of asinine things out there where, if you're not hearing gunshots, it's killing taking place, right? This is something to contend with. In Israel, our third intifada, which started a handful of years ago, was the intifada of the knife. They can't get guns. It's tough for them to get, suicide bombers into our soft targets. Everybody can pick up a knife, and from literally children to senior citizens and everything in between are carrying out active knife attacks.
We're actually seeing this in the streets of Toronto recently.
Absolutely, 100%. And so everybody uses the gunshot as the indicator. If you hear, and all the training I know that I've been through and everything that I still read and I see of all the training that goes on out there, it's you run to the gunfire. What if there's no gunfire, right? And there's that now gives permission for a lot of these strategies and tactics that, we'll get into the nuances of them more specifically, but where you're now dealing with tactical applications, methodical applications. And while you're busy with officer safety, with slicing the pie, with, you take cover this way, you cover that way, it doesn't mean that you don't have a classroom full of children that are being killed.
100%.
So killing is the issue, right? Killing is the issue. And when it comes to Tennessee, and again, we'll get to that very specifically. And just before I get to that, I'll just finish one thing I'm going to say, that I'm not here anti-police. I'm not here saying that the officers in Tennessee did anything wrong. I know for a fact that their hearts are in the right place. They are warriors to every fiber of that definition. They're warriors just for wearing that uniform. They're warriors for what they did and how they acted. However, how they engaged the Covenant School response was based on only what they know and what they've been peddled and the training and protocols that they get.
I just want to jump on that. I mean, there's nobody more supportive than law enforcement, myself, or you, or the people at CTOA. And let's face it, we have to be critical to improve. And, that's just the way it is.
Yes.
What I found is once we started videotaping our training, there was no, you had to give it up. You had to say, yeah, I made a mistake.
That's right.
Right. So I think being critical only makes people better. And I'll let you continue, but I think, as you're aware, there's some disconnect between the North American strategy and the than what your experience is in Israel.
100%, 100%. So just on the personal aspect that I was talking, just to finish that off, and then we'll dive right into the actual facts at hand here. I was mentioning that I got kids that attend school, range ages from 3 all the way up to 19 years old. And if God forbid an active shooter, an active killer ever enters their school, whatever officer shows up, I would expect them to treat my kids as if it's their own kids, just like I would expect them to expect of me
Absolutely.
to treat their kids, if they're in that school, as if those are my kids. And that's what it needs to be. There's nothing else. When we take the entire spectrum of policing and everything that we're responsible for and that we have to contend with and we have to deal with, when we take active killer, that put aside, that's a very unique, it's a very special species, and that requires a completely different approach, completely different mindset, application, and you got to separate the police mentality from that. So the stated objective, to save lives, to save as many innocent lives.
So obviously this, as you speak, a lot goes through my head. So active killer. Over the last 2 to 3 years, every day in the media, de-escalation, crisis resolution. Is this even possible in active killer situations?
Oh, that depends on the killer.
It depends on the killer, but based on what we know,
yes,
and the history of active killer, yes, would you see that as a possible resolution? Because I certainly don't.
I would not bet on it. So this is an excellent point that you bring up. So first of all, let's look at some facts here. The overwhelming majority of all active killers, long before the first responders show up, the police show up, the active killers are gone. They've either left,
yes,
or they kill themselves, and that still holds true. When they are still on scene, they're always cowards. Terrorists, criminals, mentally ill, whatever it is, they are all the same. They all hide. Generally, they're forced into engagements. You get the odd ones over there that continue to walk around and look for a fight. Lieutenant Murphy is one of the greatest examples of that, right? In Wisconsin, yeah. Pulled up and was forced into an engagement with this guy in the parking lot that was very aggressive. But that said, the rules of engagement, this is part of what I love about serving in Israel, is that we have this non-existent monkey on our back that exists in North America: to shoot or not to shoot, right? How do you address the threat when you encounter it? That entity has decided that it's a killing machine. Statistics tell us time and time again that they're not going to stop killing until either they choose to stop or they're forced to stop, meaning by an injection of a lot of lead.
Sure.
And I don't think, you can't come to that scenario with any conventional police applications and expectations. It doesn't work that way. If the shooter has dropped his or her weapon and they're on their knees and put their hands up and surrender, well, okay, that's easy. That's
but it's not something as a police officer dismounting my vehicle that I should anticipate that this is at the top of my priority today.
I agree with that, and also because one of the biggest problems with an active shooter event is the lack and lag of intelligence information. What's really going on? It takes a long time. It takes several minutes before even the people inside have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
We look at Tennessee. It was 2 minutes from the first shots until the 911 call was placed.
Right.
You have so many different sources of information that's
going to
go into.
Point out for somebody that may have not heard gunshots in a building, it's not like outside. They sound quite different and sometimes very difficult to detect direction.
From 100%, right? So the one thing that is very problematic with an active shooter event or active killer event is that you don't even know how many killers you have.
Correct.
And so if you now are face to face with, who you perceive to be, or you identify and confirm to be, or even confirm to be a killer, and you are now applying conventional police tactics, turn around, hands up in the air, get down on the ground, approach, handcuff, whatever the case is, you can still have killing going on. Hmm. So, the best, even in my 25 years of dealing with active killer intervention, the absolute best definition that I have ever heard about how you need to respond to it actually came from you. And that is that you cannot send police officers to stop an active killer. You got to send active killers to stop an active killer. And that can't be any truer. That's it. The rules of engagement have been dictated by the killer. And thank you to them for that. They made it so much easier. The most complicated scenarios are when you're doing a traffic stop, that has absolutely zero indicators of any impending attack or violence, or you're about to get a gun pulled in your face. That's where all police officers get killed. You have absolutely no clue what to expect. When you are pulling up the scene of an active killing, you know exactly what to expect. It's so simple. The majority of all the variables have been canceled out for you. Right? What you got to do has been simplified to its truest form. So with that have to be the proper rules of engagement, right? You've got an active killer. You got to stop that killing machine as fast as possible. There's no time, room for de-escalation, for negotiation. If they give you that, that's a different story. But no, in your mind, you have to already have this contract in place, even with yourself, about what you're there to do, which is to turn off, switch off immediately the killing machine. That's the only way you save lives in an active killing scenario. So with all that,
so I mean, basically, how many lives are saved is based on what I do right now. It can be 2 or it can be 25 based on what I decide to do right now.
As sad as it is to say this, a successful active shooter intervention or termination of an event is a very low casualty rate. To have a 0 casualty rate is 100% possible. That all depends on the target itself, right? When we look at Tennessee, we look at some great things that they had in place to help protect their students and their staff. Very impressive. Again, there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed there. However, let's jump right into that for a second. A lot of all the praise that's happening this past week in relation to Tennessee has to do with the outcome and the perceived professional and quick applications of the officers on scene. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to state this again. I'm not trying to take away from those officers.
No, not at all.
They're heroes. They have my hats off to them. Thank God that they were there, that they're the ones that have the badges and that they took on this job. It's just that there's issues with the objective and the applications. And some what ifs that we'll throw in here that when we juxtapose those, could the outcome have been different? So what are people basing the success of Tennessee on? They're basing it on, number one, that these officers seemed very determined. They had all these tactics and they right away went to work and they went in and they tracked down, hunted down the killer, engaged it, killed it, stopped it. Okay, that's fantastic. That can happen at any point in time, an entire spectrum of a time frame of an event. Uvalde, the officers went in much quicker than the Tennessee officers. Yes. They engaged the shooter much quicker. The problem is that, the fight component was lacking, right? There's a formula that I always reference, that I refer to when it comes to active shooter intervention. It's got to do with your protocols, your strategies, and your tactics. Your protocols is your rule book, right? That is everything that you are there to do, what your objective is, what you can do, what you can't do. Are you going in solo? Do you go in with a formation of 4? Is there any point in time where you're going to deem it to no longer be an intervention, but now a barricade situation, all that kind of stuff, all the the applicable rules and of engagement of the event. Your strategies is how are you planning on reaching the finish line of your protocol. So how do you move? The pace that you move. Where do you move to? You're going to close doors versus open doors, right? These are how you're going to get to the finish line. Then you got your tactics. If your protocols and your strategies are off base, your tactics are irrelevant. They mean absolutely nothing. Your tactics are the very micro elements here. How you move through a hallway, how you negotiate corners, how you move through stairs, what do you do when you approach a door, how you open the door, how you make entry into that room. And then, of course, the most important thing in an active shooter scenario is the fight. How do you fight? That's what it boils down to. An active shooter intervention only deals with two things: the hunt and the fight. That's all there is to it. So, your tactics, those will determine the functionality or how prolonged your functionality and your existence will be when you are engaged. Everything that we do, how we move, how we turn a corner, how we go into a room, is predicated on there's going to be a threat there, right? And that's the whole idea, is to be able to dominate and to survive. So that was lacking in Uvalde. Their protocols for the first three officers was great. The chief came in, screwed it all up, and then reverted to some asinine, primitive, tactical, back away, safety, let's think, let's open up the books, let's call resources. That's where all mixed up. The problem is that when those three officers went in, they were engaged, they ran away. Their fight component was utterly missing.
Non-existent.
And the sad part of it is that, everybody is treating the approach to an active shooter intervention like this active shooter is some kind of a formidable monster that is so dangerous. And like, my goodness, you better have backup and you better have rifles. And it couldn't be any further from the truth. And I speak from a perspective of the mentally ill and the terrorists.
Right.
They're all the same. They either run when they hear you coming, or they drop their guns, or they kill themselves, or they hide.
Yeah, well, again, the active shooter rarely runs into a police station or a military installation, and I'm not including Fort Hood, because that was an act of terrorism. It's something different.
Agreed. Uvalde, and this is where it just couldn't be any truer, and this is what makes it even so much harder to swallow with Uvalde, is that when the shooter engaged those first three officers, sent a barrage of rounds at them, they turned, they ran back in the classroom, and he hid under that desk. And he stayed there, like the coward that he is, and he waited. When he saw that there were no police approaching, he got up and he massacred 11 innocent kids. Half the casualties of Uvalde could have been saved if those freaking officers were trained properly to fight. And shooting is not fighting. And your active shooter drills and scenarios, the fight is missing. The fight's missing. Shooting is one thing. That's what everybody does on the range.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me, like, Jimmy, can you teach me to shoot? And I say no. Because to me, shooting is like, it's just, the way it's sort of an administrative exercise at best, where we're checking boxes, and you have 50 rounds and they have to be on paper in these different positions. Reality, there's no bad hits on the human body. There's only good and better. And so the way it's a matter of checking the boxes, and we're not, again, preparing officers for a fight. And I think there's a huge disconnect, because you have the mat room, right? You have outside play area, and you have the range, but they're all disconnected in some shape or form, and there's no crossover, right? Because again, if you're fighting for your weapon to retain it on the ground, that can turn into a lethal confrontation. But 11% of police officers were killed by unarmed perpetrators.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think there's a big disconnect. Well, I know there is, because I've done this for so long. And so I think, unfortunately, people think that fighting is a bad thing, but sometimes it's a life-saving resource, regardless of whether it's in your hands, a baton. It really doesn't matter. But at some point, it's going to be a component of your law enforcement career.
Well, there's no magical solution to it. If you're in a fight, you have to fight.
Yeah,
that's it. There's nothing to get you out of it.
Yeah.
And so, when we talk about active killer intervention specifically, the fighting is very unique. It's very specific. When you have a threat that is actually maneuvering and strategizing and is prepared and, is applying essentially a lot of all the variables that you bring to the equation as a professional, the fight takes on a whole different dynamic. So,
So while you're on that,
yes.
When again, in North American law enforcement training, aggression is a bad word, and a bad perhaps thing to be trained, but bad optics or something to be training law enforcement, personnel to do. But I mean, if you're going to win a fight, you got to be aggressive, and you got to be aggressive within the first 15 seconds of that engagement, whether it's with your hands or a firearm or what have you. Because after that, that person's more fit, they have more fight in them.
Yes.
It's not going to work out well for them.
Agree.
Right. But so again, I think there should be more aggression training for police officers where they have to battle out of a corner with 7 people, or any of those techniques that we used to teach that controlled aggression.
I agree. Listen, it's all mindset first and foremost.
Absolutely.
You can take an individual that doesn't know how to kick or punch, you give them the right mindset, they will do much more effectively and ultimately than.
See, but again, so now I'm kind of on a tangent here, but that's another thing. Does it matter how you hit somebody as long as you're hitting them, right? So, you should be twisting your fist, and don't hit with your closed fist because you'll break your hand. Like, there's all these ridiculous notions that are out there in the training use of force community. It actually doesn't matter how an individual's striking at that person as long as they're striking to repel the attack.
I agree. And yes. Well, and that's where we're at, right? I mean, demilitarize the police.
Or use of force mythbusters, I guess is what the two of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, sure.
So many directions with that, right? I mean, look, it's what are you going to do? You look at so many of the videos out there of police officers getting attacked, and it's like it's not.
I mean, when I look at, obviously we watch a lot of martial arts videos and things like that, and you constantly see the wrist grab. My question is, how did somebody manage to grab your wrist in the first place?
Sure.
So a lot of this stuff is it's totally nonsensical. Yeah. And none of the, perhaps except with the exception of UFC, do we talk about the violence in defending yourself? Yes. There has to be an application of violence, whether you agree with it or not. I'm not a particularly violent person, but I know that I've had to do that so I can come home at the end of the day.
Violence, with bad people out there, violence is their personality.
Sure.
Violence with good people is a tool.
Right.
And when you're put into a violent situation, you gotta have the right tools. There's no way around it. There's no way around it, right? And so when we go back to this topic of active shooter intervention, that's about as extreme of a fight as you're going to get. You're acting on zero time here. Every single second that you are not switching this killer off is potentially another dead innocent man, woman, or child. And that's it. And once you go, you go. This is the problem. If those, going back to Uvalde for a second, those officers had the mindset, they would have kept going forward. They would have kept going forward.
Have we made it too complicated?
It doesn't make any more sense. It's become a tactical game. It's become just a gimmick. It's become a thing where there has to be these SOPs. They have to be in a binder. Everybody has to be doing the same. It's nonsensical. It's nonsensical. If you walked up to your house and you heard gunfire inside and your family was in there and you had a gun, you'd kick that door and you'd run to that threat. You'd put an end to it. That's what active killer intervention is. And at the end of the day, when you do that, when you're quick, when you're aggressive, when you take the initiative, 99.9% of all the scenarios, you are going to dominate that situation really, really quick. You're going to psychologically dominate that killer. You're going to physiologically dominate them, and that will result in you physically, tactically dominating them.
I think for me, if I go back, and arguably the first, active killer was Whitman in the Texas Tower, where this went on for over an hour, and they're flying helicopters over, and they're trying to engage them from above, and there's citizens firing up from the ground, and finally two cops that they're on their days off, and they got called in, and they looked at each other and said, "Let's go up there and get this guy." And they walked up the stairs, they confronted him, and stopped the killing. So how do we go from that? And that's actually the incident that started SWAT teams in the United States. After that was the SWAT teams came to be. But with that said, how did we get from that simple plan to this complicated, ball of yarn that's really difficult to unravel? Especially like if you haven't, it's one thing to have a tactical background and be subjected to that type of training, but to be an officer, just like, you just got out of Ontario Police College or what have you, and now you're being exposed to this. It seems to me that there's too many things. Like you say, cut in the pie, and this, I need three. I need, and they come to the doorways, you do this. When you come to the hallways, you do that. Like, is that, to me, it's just too complicated.
Of course it is. It is. It's got no place in this subject of active killer intervention. It's been overcomplicated. No questions about it. Maybe what we'll do to just kind of be more specific about what we're here to discuss. We'll watch the video. We'll do a play-by-play of the video. I will point out some of my opinions on things, and I'm going to, again, have everybody keep in mind that we're going to view this through two lenses simultaneously. The first lens is these officers doing what they were trained to do, and they do it beautifully. No questions about it. There's a lot of people, quarterbacking, a lot of tactical experts quarterbacking their tactics. I don't care about that. I don't care if they zig when they should have zagged. That has no bearing here. That's not, at the end of the day, what's going to save the most amount of lives. And these guys are, my understanding, they're not a SWAT team. They're not tactical guys. They are a bunch of guys that come from, you see guys that are in plain clothes with vests. You see guys in uniform. You see a guy with a riot helmet on, right? So they come from all walks of life. The true essence of what an active killer intervention, looks like as far as the response. So from the perspective of them doing what they were trained to do, consummate professionals, again, 10 out of 10 for that, have is what they were trained to do. The only objective I care about when it comes to this is saving as many lives as possible, plain and simple. And there's only one way you do that. There is only a right way and a wrong way, plain and simple. If you are in a 100-yard dash and you choose to walk instead of sprint, you are wrong. That's it. There's no debating that. So I want, just everybody to hopefully keep innocent possible with the application. So this is the body cam, the most popular one that's out there right now of this officer, Officer Engelbert, who's got the carbine, and he's the one that ultimately ends up killing the killer, terminating the killer. So this is right from the point where he pulls up. So let's already stop right there and have a quick little discussion here. There's some communication going on and making entry on the front side. Okay, that's right. That's fantastic. He jumps out of the car. Here's the metric that I put to everybody. And in my decades of teaching active shooter intervention all around the world, students and instructors from all different walks of life and methodologies and belief systems, and everybody has their different opinions and this and how you do it, and formations and whatever. I throw one question at them. And so far, unanimously, the results have always been the exact same. The question that I hit them with is, you pull up to the scene and it's your kid that's in that school. Are you going to respond, react the way that your protocols dictate? Are you going to do what you're telling me you do in an active shooter protocol? And the overwhelming majority of the time, the answer is absolutely not. The answer is, I'm fucking get into that school, find the killer, and kill them right away as fast as I can. Not waiting for anybody, not running to get equipment. Well, you don't say. So he runs to get his rifle. Again, if we want to break this down from a tactical perspective, sure, you can see logic in that. You're going into a very high risk situation. Sure. You've got a killer armed with who knows what. You want some more ballistic capability with reach. Okay, is it necessary? No, absolutely not. You got your handgun, that's all you need. Your handgun, your legs, your eyes, that's all you need. I can guarantee you that the results would have been identical if he went in with just a handgun.
Room combat, a lot of times a pistol is more advantageous than
1,000%. You get much more tactical versatility with it. There's no questions about it, right? So this already is where my cringe factor already starts to go up. Let's start with this. When they pulled up on scene, there was no active killing going on. Okay, based on everything that I have read, heard, researched so far about this scenario, when they pulled up on scene, The killer is standing on the second floor out a window, shooting out the window at responding officers and outside. There's no active killing. There's active shooting. There's no active killing. So the whole time that we are going to roll through this video, which is about 6 minutes long, we are going to always assume that there's active killing going on, so that that killer has access to kids in that school. Again, kudos to the school. They evacuated. This killer didn't have many targets to go after, right? Which was fantastic. So let's carry on with that right now. So again, your kid is inside that school, and are you going to be doing and looking the way that this officer is right here? Very professional officer, very calm, collected.
I'd say the teacher is very composed. So
I'll give it to the school. Fantastic,
it's
fantastic protocols.
Yeah. They're upstairs. Hey.
All right. That right there is where should have been the trigger. They're upstairs, they're shooting upstairs. That's it. The strategy of an active shooter intervention, your objective is to find the source of the killing as fast as possible. There's a way in which you have to do that. You do that by indicators. You only have two modes in active shooter intervention. You have the hunt and you have the fight. The hunt is what gets you to the fight. Okay? The hunt is indicators. You go after whatever bits and pieces of indicators.
It'll be blood trails, it'll be people
Streams, sure.
like swimming upstream like a salmon, people fleeing,
Absolutely.
sound, that type of thing,
100%.
pointing.
Exactly.
Right.
There's the indicator right there.
Yeah,
They're
she's amazing.
Told you right where they are, upstairs, right? And so now, between the point when this officer arrives on scene, jumps out of his car, okay, until
Give me three. Let's get three.
listen to the indicator. She's telling him exactly where to go.
Let's go. I need three. Let's go.
Right to this point here, it's a minute and 5 seconds. A minute and 5 seconds. If this was an active killing, you want to talk about how many dead kids?
Well, again, a lot of people that, have never been on our shoes don't realize a minute's a long time.
Yes.
Like it's actually a long time, right? Because you can do a lot of things in a minute, right? So what I've learned to do over the years, like they say there's only a minute, like I'm not in a panic. There's lots of time for me to prep things and we're good. So
Absolutely.
a minute is actually quite a long time.
Absolutely, 100%. So let's carry on. So he gets to the door, he's opening the door. On the side of the school, right, just some of the problems from the security aspect, from hardening the other target here. Having your doors locked to the outside is a bad idea.
Right.
Because here's the problem, right? If these guys were an entrance where the administrator wasn't there with a key,
Exactly.
Lost the key, I don't know what.
Sure.
You got some life-ending delays that are going on here. That's a huge problem. They have this blaring alarm that's going off. I think that's good for 30 to 60 seconds top, and then shut it off. Right? Officers are going in. You want them to be able to pick up on any indicator.
Absolutely.
That thing will mask gunshots. It will mask screams. Right? Those are just a few elements from the security perspective.
Metro Police.
All right. So she made it very clear. End of the hall, there's gunshots. Nothing here should concern them.
So what I'm seeing is a lot of training. People say training is scars. So they're reacting as they've been trained. Open door, like they're calling out things that really aren't necessary. It's only necessary in that training environment. Because if I didn't call out open door, an instructor with a red shirt would say, "Hey, you missed that."
Sure. And again, there's a lot of blurring of different concepts, right? In a tactical environment, it's important to us, right? It's irrelevant here. Let's even backtrack before that though. As I mentioned, right, your first mode in an active killer intervention is the hunt. As fast as you can, you got to find this killer. So if you and me running through the doors of that school. Okay, now, if my kid, God forbid, is in that school, and we got 2 hallways, left and right, and you go to the right, do you know where I'm going?
You're probably the
I'm going to the left.
Yeah.
What purpose does it serve my kid, any other kid, for me to be hanging out with you if
Okay.
we're going where that
So now
killing machine is not?
I think this is an extremely important point, because in Israel, where you can form as a team, you're autonomous,
Yes.
right? You're autonomous amongst a group. So you can go left, right, up, down, and you don't need to wait for anybody to go with you. You're trying to locate that individual, and then people will come to you once you've located that.
So refine this. I'll refine that.
Please.
Number one, very, very important that we define here that the only time that we operate with the concept of a solo operator is in an active killing.
Exactly.
That's it. That's it. Everything else, it's what everybody understands.
Sure.
Hostage rescue, tactical, war and arrest, whatever the case is. Okay.
Why can't we wrap our heads around that in North America?
Because people want to pretend that they're professionals and they want to pretend that they're doing applying best practices and officer safety and all this other garbage that has zero bearing here. And if anybody who believes in that nonsense, if their kid was in that school, I promise you, I'll put all the money on the table. They would be running through that brick wall, disregarding everything that they believe and teach themselves.
In point in fact, Beslan, it was actually the mothers that opened fire.
Yes.
That prompted the special.
Parents decided to charge in. They couldn't wait for the army anymore, and that's what started the whole domino effect of the engagement, right? But for a second here, going back to your question about Israel or methodology, you can have a single operator, whether it's a police officer, security guard, a special military special operator, whatever the case is. You can have 10 of those individuals there. There's never a team dynamic.
Right.
It's individuals. So there's never a break in anything. Now, when you're in hunt mode, when you're looking for the indicator, you have to be effective, right? You have to understand right away, how do I achieve the goal as quickly as possible? Again, if I saw you going to the right, it makes no sense for me to follow you. You're as capable as can be. Right. I'm hoping, and quite frankly, at the very top of the totem pole of all dictate success on any day of the week is luck, first and foremost. We're jumping into the ocean with sharks. Yeah. We might get bit, we might get gobbled up, we might survive. You never know. So get that out of the way already. Erase that. You are going in right now. Pray that God is with you. Go do your best and be effective to the objective of really saving as many lives as you can. I don't need to be with you. You know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing. And not only that, it doesn't serve the purpose. Yeah. These guys here, okay, within it's a minute and 5 seconds, till they entered that room, okay? I will bet you that within 30 to 40 seconds, they could have been at that source of that gunfire. Right away.
I don't disagree.
Okay. This has nothing to do with the world of active shooter invention. All right. Now, another important point here, you have all of these, you got some organizations out there, a lot of instructors out there that deal with active shooter intervention. There's a massive organization, I won't say the name, that has set kind of the gold standard, de facto national standard. All right. And everybody has started to profess, we teach solo officer intervention. Right. Number one, that's very questionable. That's for a whole different discussion as far as how they actually apply the solo responder. However, on a macro level, on a strategy perspective, they teach solo officer, doubles, and then, the famous 4-officer diamond formation, whatever you want to call it. The moment that you give officers any option, you're not going to see a single solo officer enter a scene. The only time they're going to enter, the only time they're going to do anything is if they really have their heads about themselves and they don't give a shit about the tactical fantasy world, or they're forced into it. Mm-hmm. The killer steps out of the school, and now they have to engage. Right. Now they're forced into it. However, the moment that you have this menu of options, every single officer is going to stand there and say, I need 2, I need 3. That's it. So the rule is, if it's an active killing, every second that you are allowing that killer to exist, you are permitting an innocent child to be massacred. That's on you. That's on you. That's on your ridiculous protocols. Mm-hmm. If you are truly there to save as many innocent lives as possible, you get on scene, right. You got functioning legs and a gun, you go. That's it. So we already have a big problem here. all right, from the application. Again, what they're doing is fantastic work, tactically, but it's the wrong application for this objective. Again, too many seconds that could be shaved off, which is the name of the game here.
With me. What you doing? Next.
There's 4 of them here. They could have already covered this entire school, both floors, on their own in the amount of time that we are watching right now.
Take this with me. Take this. No, that's locked. Take this. Do it.
Again, Officer Engelbert, fantastic leadership skills and initiative and experience. I don't know what his experience is, but you're not seeing a rookie here, that's for sure. You're seeing somebody that actually pays attention in every class he's been in, and that's great. That's really great to see. I just wish he was equipped with different protocols and strategies and tactics. What's he waiting for? He's a cop with a gun. Why are you standing aside? Now, we know the answer is to let the rifle go by. Who cares about the rifle? It's not ballistics that are going to stop the killer. It's the application. So we now very clearly overly hear a bunch of gunshots. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. That could have been 4 kids that were dead right there. And again, promise you, guarantee you, that if any one of these officers, if it was their kid that was in that room, none of them would be moving like this. They'd be moving the proper way, which they would be bolting down there faster than they ever have been their whole life. And that is the only correct way to respond. All right, now let's get to a bit of a micro tactical application here. This again relates to tactics. I understand why he opened up wide, far from the cover point there, because this flawed notion of don't crowd your cover, keep a distance between you and cover or obstacles, whatever the case is. When you talk about an obstacle that is between you and the threat, it's an angles game. It's not a distance game. This is highly problematic. Number one, on a micro perspective, this killer is standing there not being dynamic. All right, so there's no interference by the cover point there. But in far too many cases, and you'll see this on every freaking range that you go to in North America, all barricades are covered in bullet holes. Okay, and that doesn't come from paper targets that are shooting at the officers on the line. It comes from the officers in no stress environment that are focusing on all of their 7 principles of shooting that are shooting cover. If this was a dynamic killer that now actually turned to engage the officer and brought them a fight, you would have bullet groupings like this. You would have rounds that would be hitting the.
I can tell you, I've seen some bad accidents on metal barricades.
Absolutely,
and rounds coming back into the office.
100%. Enough soldiers have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. For years, that's what we've experienced in Israel. The muzzle always goes past the barricade point. Now, more importantly, here for a second. More importantly, on a macro level, what are these guys doing? You have this whole assortment of warriors here with guns and capability, right? And
they're in check.
if this, so now that killer was standing there shooting out the window. Okay, this was not a fight here. This was not a fight. This was a shooting. Excellent shooting, but it's not a fight. All right, let's pretend for a second that it was an actual fight. That this killer now took a tactical position over there, was shooting back. This officer would be shooting down. I have no doubt that eventually, in how many microseconds to seconds, he would succeed. I'd put my money on the officer here. These guys can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Now, let's take the worst case scenario. If there's more than one killer in here, and this officer here is now busy engaging that killer, and on the other side of the school, you have killing that is going on, active killing that is going on. Nobody can get through. So This is a horrible tactical application when it comes to engaging from an obstacle. He should have been sucked up to it where there's zero interference. He closes the distance on that threat. His firepower is far more effective. He's got bullets that are going 100% the threat, no matter how much movement you have.
He needs less skill at close range.
Yes,
Yeah,
100%. All these officers can now join him, right? So when you're in hunt mode, everybody should be scattered around looking. The moment you hear an indicator, a gunshot, anything, everybody suddenly converges. Everybody runs to that one point, maximum weapons on the threat. They can't do anything here to back them up or to save other lives if they needed to. Beautiful finishing shots. He's talking about providing security and, are there any secondaries, right? So, okay, well, what's everybody doing here? Turn around, start running. An active shooter intervention is just a repeat of hunting and fighting, and you don't stop. There's no more fighting. You keep on hunting until somebody grabs you and says, yo, calm down. It's good. It's all accounted for. We've checked all the intel, confirmed everything, right? So this is the second team that simultaneously went in. So again, from an application of the environment, they couldn't get to the second floor. The door is locked here. These are things that have to be accounted for in the security applications of the soft target. Right. A gun is a gun. A lot of misperceptions again.
Move. I'm with you. Got away.
Fantastic there, right? No waste of time. He goes to the first door, it's locked, moves on to the next one. Very good. Doesn't mean that you don't have killing going on in that door, but you only do what you can do, right? That's the name of the game. You are not going to come out of this with a 100% a beneficial end result, right? So that was nice to see his thinking on the spot.
Hit the stairs. Go stairs. Go stairs. Go.
I find this interesting in that people are telling people to do what they should be doing. Right? I mean, you wouldn't be having to tell me to go because I would have gone already. And when I teach this, it's like I'm not waiting for you. You have to keep up to me.
That's what it should be. Let me give you this example, right? You played volleyball any point in your life, right? Right throughout school. I was not great of a volleyball player, but played more than enough right throughout gym class. And so, what is the biggest blooper that always happens in every single volleyball game? You got it's 6 per side, right? You got 6 of your players there, and the opposing side launches that ball up, and it's going up, and it's coming down. What's all 6 people doing? They're standing there staring, right? They're staring. Why is it? And boom, the ball just sits there, uninterrupted, unchecked. Why? Because
everybody's trying to make it
again, right?
Exactly.
Have one-on-one. What do you think is going to happen? That ball is never going to go unchecked, right? Everybody's going to be diving and running and getting it on their own. Why? Because they know I'm on my own. That's called initiative. That's what needs to be here. Don't be telling people what to do. Don't be pushing them ahead. There's a point where he pushes the shotgun officer through the door. Yeah. If that guy isn't faster than you, he should be in front of you.
Exactly.
That's the way that it goes, right? You have no clue. Unlike any tactical operation or hostage rescue operation, in an active shooter, active killer predicament, again, the problem is the chaos that goes on, the lack of information. Things generally, right? Well, not generally. Things there's different phases of the event, right? And the absolute probably best time that you can appear is when the actual killing is going on and you still have potential targets, people inside running all over the place, right? Gives you a lot of tactical advantages, and it right away allows you to see what's going on. When you have this, where you're not sure, that's where the trepidation comes in, right? That's where it's a little bit more complicated. But that said,
but again, in Israel, you're not worried about a rear guard position.
there's no, this is, we set up for it. Sorry, you're on your own. That's it. That's it. It sucks to be you. You get shot in the back, it sucks to be you. Guess what? I can tell you this, okay, for fact. They could have 8 of these officers there in all of their, fancy new age national standard application of formations. They can still get shot in the back. You are not going to account for everything, so leave it alone. Be quick, be aggressive, have proper tactics, and that's it. God will do the rest for you, right? But you also have a responsibility here. So when you're moving around in such a chaotic environment, things are going to go missed. Things are going to go unchecked.
Of course.
So it is what it is. When everybody is operating as a solo operator, you got more chances of less things being missed. This is the misconception here. People think, well, there's only one. It's safer if there's 2 or 4. That is so false. That is so false. It also causes a big disruption. If something happens to one in your formation, you're now lagging, you're stalling. You're
well, again, I think that's another misconception, is that when you have a formation, somebody's got to lead that formation. And leadership is it just doesn't happen magically. Right? Yes. So not everybody's prepared for that. Some people are natural leaders. But if you look at like Toronto, with how many officers we have, it's entirely possible that you'll show up and not know the person standing beside you.
Certainly.
Right. So right away, you're going to have a difficulty moving that formation. Right. And then with that said, if something, somebody gets hit, now total chaos is going to erupt.
Sure.
Right. So I think in some cases, again, I'm not a fan of the formations, you know that.
Yes.
Right. So I think giving people autonomy, again, and moving as fast as possible and not worrying about these shoulda, coulda, woulda, maybe type of things is actually the better response than what, again, which seems to be the North American model since Columbine.
Yes.
23 years now.
100%. On the topic of safety, which a lot of times safety comes with effective initiative, right? And I'll give you an example. I was at OPC many years ago, taking a course. And so the instructors brought us out to the their mock village area, and we entered this I remember it was a bank or office space, cubicles and desks and the whole bit. And they're talking about a set scenario that they teach in the basic recruit program, where they'll have an instructor inside there with a shotgun, right? A simulation shotgun. And this is a, not high risk, obviously, entry, but this is a scenario where, for example, there's an alarm that went off middle of the night and 2 constables arrive and they have to go in and clear the room. And as they're moving through applying whatever applications they were taught, at some point in time, the instructor racks the shotgun, right, multiple times, all right, just to, again, make sure that stimulus is given, and they want to see how they react. So I remember the instructor is telling us, we are having a lot of problems with this because we're just not getting the objective that we want. And I cut him off right away. I say, listen, I'll bet you that I know exactly what you want, and I'll bet you that I know what it is that you're seeing. So what you want is to see an immediate application of what they're taught, immediate ability to think, to strategize, to communicate, to maneuver, to take position, right? Because inevitably what ends up happening is the instructor, after racking it a bunch of times, will come out and engage the students. And there's too many failure rates there. So that's what you want to see, is you want to see them right away tactically take command and control and be effective and be able to, pick up on the instructor with the shotgun and engage them first. But you're not seeing that. What you're seeing is these 2 constables, they stop. And the first thing they do is they turn and look at each other. And they start to communicate, whether it's with words, whether it's with sign language, whether it's with blank stares. And at some point in time, the instructor in that little communication steps out and manages to, most of the time, engage the constables. And he says, Nir, that's exactly what's going on. I said, well, I'm going to tell you how you fix it. Stop sending them in 2s. Send them in 1. That doesn't mean that your protocol is going to dictate that when an officer is on patrol, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's an alarm going off in a building, that officer is going to go in on their own to that building. That's asinine. But what you are doing now is you are forcing them to think for themselves, to be locked into their tactical applications, to not rely or depend on anything. You got now two professionals that know what to do instantly. They don't need to rely on each other. Same thing here, right? You see when these guys marry up the two teams, they get to that big intersection and they're all stopped there, right? And cover left and they're communicating right in that moment in time, Killer could step right out and take out half of them because they're busy focused on it.
Well, many years ago, we used to walk the beat and travel by ourselves.
Sure.
Many years. And so you learned what you could and what you couldn't do because you're by yourself. You get to interact with people more. And quite frankly, I think it's something they should go back to. Of course, I mean, you're always downtown Toronto, you always back up there if you need it. But I thought it certainly was a good confidence builder, learning experience.
Which is a huge part, right? Is the confidence piece. And that also comes through initiative. And then you fill all that up with proper strategy and tactics. At the end of the day, you're always going to get not always, nothing's 100%, but 99% of the time, you are going to get your result that you hope for. So you want to see more lives get saved. You want to see officers be safer in these types of scenarios. You have them properly, effectively trained to engage on their own and to go in on their own.
So you may not be able to answer this, but we've opened a can of worms today.
Sure.
That's sort of what we do. How do we, to the instructors that are out there that are listening, that they're in use of force programs, what have you, how do we give them the courage to reach out to us and say, you know what, I'm interested in what you're saying. I want to maybe change our program, look at our program, maybe not adopt everything, but some of the key things that were said today, I kind of resonate with that. And maybe we could, slowly start to change. Again, I think what's happened is the training environment has gotten stale. It doesn't seem to move, and it really hasn't since Columbine in regard to active shooter. It just stays stagnant, right? And I know there's people out there that they go into use of force. They really want to make a change, but they just haven't the courage to say, well, time out, inspector, I'd really like to pursue this, and maybe it'll make a difference at the end of the day.
100%. We definitely have the problem of ego. We definitely have the problem of ego. People just, it's okay. Listen, we are in a profession that many humans can't do. And that deserves, be proud of yourself. Be proud of yourself. There's nothing wrong with being proud. But don't take away from, the officers that you're responsible for training to keep them safe and alive. And don't take away from the people who depend on us, the kids.
Right.
To keep them alive. We have no right to do that. I have no problems going into ego battles with anybody. In fact, that's what keeps everything healthy and safe. You know what? Instead of sitting there and saying, hell's that guy talking about? We know how to do things. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way that everybody does it. I'll tell you right now, a little secret in life, if everybody's doing it, it's probably wrong.
Right.
You look at any application anywhere in life, never follow the crowd. Never follow the crowd. And so
there's actually, that's interesting because I follow things like this. And a number of years ago, the firefighters that they do forests. And
yes, sure.
Well, apparently they were getting overrun by the fire. And some of them were taught that they put a fire blanket over and they wait and they're hopefully the fire.
Yes.
So the people that did that actually expired. They passed away. And the guys that just ran for their lives, like not against the protocol and the training, they survived.
Look at that.
Right. So again, I think sometimes training is a good thing, and sometimes it instills, other than natural evolutionary biology responses that make good sense. Like when there's a fire, you should probably run.
Yeah.
And but I think a lot of times the training overwhelms our natural. I mean, even like if you look at like active shooter, people are trying to run away from it. I mean, they're not trying to hide, and they're trying to run away. And again, it seems that evolution has provided us with the tools to do the right response, but cognitively we create these training protocols that go against what we should naturally be doing.
I agree. And so look, I mean, everybody should always adopt the philosophy of questioning yourself. question everything that you've been taught, question everything that you're doing, because that's the only way you're going to find flaws. Don't fool yourself into believing that what you're doing is right because that's all you know, because that's what you've been taught, because that's what somebody tells you this is the right way to do it.
It's the unquestioned answer is the problem.
That's exactly it. We don't do that, right? Everybody prefers to just pat each other on the back. So you've got an ego problem. You have the hierarchy problem. Yeah, you've got the officers that perceive themselves to be less experienced and less, I don't know, capable, and they've got somebody more senior above them, and so you just got to do what they tell you. So you're just going to do the thing because
the way I found like to get more experience was to get involved in more work. Right. So I stop more vehicles. I get involved in more arrests. I take more classes. Like I'm constantly out there, and that's what builds confidence. And that's what experience is. It is. You can have a 30-year career and do the first year 30 times, or you can have different years as you progress and move yourself forward. Right. And so to me, like getting experience in law enforcement is totally up to the individual. Right. 100%. How much work you want to take on.
100%. For those who are in leadership positions, even in the training world, right? I have every now and again, I have students of mine that will call me and say, "Hey, listen, there's this guy, Israeli, claims to be this. He's coming to my town. He's doing a seminar. Should I go?" And my answer is the same, whether I know the instructor is legit and it's going to be good, whether I know that the instructor is a fraud and it's going to be crap. My answer is always the same: you should go. Go, because at the end of the day, you will never know where what you know and what you do stands if you don't test it against everything. If you don't experience the good, then you won't get the confirmation that what you're doing is good. If you don't experience the bad, you also won't get the confirmation.
But that's the Israeli model, is to break the idea, right? Like you come up with a concept, but then once the concept is established, you do everything to destroy it, right? To say that this will work or it won't work.
Our model is always from the eyes of the enemy. That's the slogan. Right. Everything that we do in training and how we approach a new application that we have to develop, we take all the experience that we have. This is what our enemies have been doing to us all the time, right? And now let's put ourselves in their shoes. I'm the enemy now, and I want to take over this building. I want to defeat you. I want to be the killer inside this room and defeat what you think that you're doing is going to be effective. Nobody does that though. Everybody comes from a perspective of automatic support no matter what. And when they role play, when they try to play the other side, it's synthetic. It's not real. I remember when I was going through my basic tactical course here in Canada, when I came back from Israel, and we got to 3-month course, and we got to the active shooter portion of it, and we're in the school. Everything in the classroom was great, and now we're in the school applying all the tactics, and we're 4-operator team, and we're coming up the stairs at this end of the hallway, and purposely, of course, at this end of the hallway was a classroom with the killer in it, right? And as we get up to that the doorway, open up the hall, and right at that point, the instructor in the room gets a cue to start shooting. That's supposed to be our stimulus to react, right? And so the first thing that hits me right away is I'm listening to the pattern of the gunfire, right? And right away, I know that it's designed to have us succeed.
Right.
Okay. Because if we reach that room and everybody's dead, then we failed, which means that the tactics that we're learning, the protocol we're learning, is false. And so, what are you doing? Right? Something is wrong here. So that's number one. It was too unrealistic of what I know goes on in real active killing scenarios.
Yeah.
Of course, the Israeli in me came out, right? And I broke the line and I started sprinting down the hall because that's the right thing to do. And in the classroom, we were taught you roll to the thunder, the gunfire, you move, there's no time. Every second counts. You got to save the innocent. And what did I hear when I was halfway down the hall? My man, what the fuck are you doing? Fall back, wait for your team. Like, well, there you go. There's words. Everybody knows the words, right? But there's so much resistance to ensuring that the actions that we're teaching, that we're learning, that we're doing are actually congruent with those words. So there's a big mess in the training community. I think that, people got to put their egos and their perceptions aside. And even if you're the best and what you have is actually the most optimal, you got to go out still. You got to go out and engage and cross-train and take more courses. And people got to come together more. And it's for the greater cause. It's not for, the pat on the shoulder.
It's for the kids in the school. That's what it's for.
And I don't understand how people can deviate from that. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how common sense doesn't tell you that while you're standing outside trying to apply these protocols, you're allowing kids to be massacred.
So I appreciate your time today. As I said, we've opened up a huge can of worms. We'll be back. This will be a series. This is the first installment of it. And as I said, it's a complicated subject matter because there's so many different levels of it. Probably the next time, like I said, we can get Peter Collins on, we'll talk about the psychology behind it. And then, of course, the psychology that officers responding should have, how they recover afterwards. But then there's some simplistic things that you saw the teachers here. That teacher would have been a great police dispatcher. Those things, and again, security starts at the front door. And I know Nir will agree with me. We do a lot of security theater here in North America, and where you think you might be safe, perhaps not. So I'll end it with that. Thank you very much. Again, RBG Security, Lambert, Sleeple, Hudson Supply, all our supporters, and thanks to Grant, my producer, couldn't do it without him. And that's it for CTOA Copcast.